Welcome back to the Changing Minds, Changing Lives podcast. My name is Julie Sowash. I am the strategic advisor and founder of Disability Solutions and the CEO of Catch 22 Group. We're so excited to have you all back. Before we get started today, I want to just call out the last episode, depending on where you are in your listening track. A couple weeks ago, we had a Changing Minds, Changing Lives takeover with a former guest, Grant Harris, who, if you haven't listened to his episode, definitely go take a listen. And he actually brought some guests on with him, two guest hosts, and he had a conversation that I think is so worth a listen and is actually going to converge with the conversation we have today. But really, the conversation covered neurodivergence in communities of color, titling the episode Seen But Not Heard. It's really powerful. And the work that Grant does and the way that he talks about his disability and disability in communities of color is so thought-provoking and so worth our time. So definitely go check out the takeover from June 17th, 2025. And, just before we get started again today, we actually have our episode being sponsored, which is so exciting. It's our first sponsored episode, and we are in partnership with the Maryland Center for Construction, Education, and Innovation, known as MCCEI, and it's an independent workforce intermediary providing opportunities and resources designed to uplift and support individuals from all backgrounds in built environment careers. And not many of you know this, but my dad, Greg, was a crane operator on some of the skyscrapers that we now see dotting the skyline in Indianapolis, where I'm from. And then he went on to be a part of the local labor union supporting heavy equipment operators. He taught me the value that labor brings to our communities and how strongly built workforce programs can not just build amazing pipelines of talent, but also provide talented young people with long and successful careers in the trades. So, with that being said, I'm so excited to introduce our guest today, Jennifer Dewees. Jennifer is a nonprofit construction workforce development leader, DEI advocate, and thought leader in workforce development and built environment spaces. She is the president of MCCEI, co-founder and construction lead of Maryland's Apprenticeship Connector. She has been recognized as a Daily Record Top 100 in Maryland, BBJ's Women Who Mean Business, I love that, Construction and Dive's Top 33 Women in Construction, and Crew Baltimore's Women of Influence. Wow. And has been featured in multiple media publications. She's dedicated to expanding apprenticeships, connecting job seekers with industry leaders, and strengthening Maryland's talent pipeline. Whew. And she just got back from Paris. Welcome to Changing Minds, Changing Lives, Jennifer.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. So tell us a little bit about all of those words that I just said. What does that mean? What does MCCEI do? And how does it help develop those incredible talent pipelines we were talking about?
So at MCCI, our mission is to connect and educate a diverse population to careers in the built environment. And when we say built environment, it's anything man-made. So it could be architecture, engineering, construction management, and the skilled trades. Because you may or may not be aware, but by 2030, 40% of our current construction workforce will retire. And only one person is coming in for every four that retire into the industry. We have seen an upswing when it comes to Gen Z and their interest in skilled trades and the construction industry in general, but we are definitely about to hit a workforce cliff, and it is coming fastly approaching. So we have been working on this for the last 15 years at MCCI, and we've made a lot of major progress, and Maryland is doing some really amazing things to support alternative pathways to success for its students and career seekers. We have a long way to go.
It's the story of our life, right? There's always more work to be done.
Exactly.
And I mean, I think that's just incredible. As someone who lives in Europe at least part of the year, I can see here in our workforce development how important apprenticeships are, especially through the trades, skilled labor, construction, all of those things. And yet, I think as Americans, we don't see or talk about the importance of apprenticeships, journeymen, those kind of actual pathways into careers nearly as often as we talk about the importance of having a college diploma, college degree. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you've built apprenticeship programs and what kind of an impact they make on your local community?
Yeah, so we're really lucky here in Maryland in that the state government and education system is aligned in realizing that college is not for everyone. And that is not to say that college is not a valuable pathway. We absolutely believe in college. In fact, there are a lot of built environment careers in which you need to go to college. You need to go to college to be an engineer and an architect, and a lot of in construction management as well. But there are pathways that have both, right? An apprenticeship program, especially in Maryland, but most states also include college credit. A lot of our community colleges here have apprenticeships, and a lot of our apprenticeship providers, like unions and associated builders and contractors, include college credit. So it's not an either or option; it's an and if you can get your employer to pay for your school, which is what an apprenticeship program is, I mean, it's a no brainer to me. And I wish it's something that somebody had mentioned to me when I was in school, because I don't know about you, but it took me 20 years to pay off my college loans. And it took me a very long time to get to the salary that apprentices are getting to. So here in Maryland, we have what's called the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. And it is an initiative around revamping Maryland's higher education and K to 12 school system. And one of the pillars is around college and career readiness. And it says that by 2031, 45% of graduating seniors will have received an industry recognized credential, and or participated in the youth portion of a registered apprenticeship program. And so in Maryland, that means that you can start your adult registered apprenticeship while you're still in high school. Many people may not realize that a lot of high school seniors don't have a full course load anymore when they've their last year. They're leaving, they're working they're going to half days basically. And we've been really lucky in that school systems are motivated to get these kids working, and to get them that experience. And we're seeing employers that are really embracing that, and unions and other apprenticeship programs are doing that. So kids are starting off at, usually that summer between junior and senior year, as apprentices, with like their local union or electrical alliance or something like that, and making good money, and starting that 4-year journey towards their journey workers license, and finishing up. We've seen some apprenticeship programs. The average age of an apprentice in the United States of America is 30. Think about that's 12 years of lost time from when you graduate from high school. Well, now we have programs in Maryland that the average age has dropped to 24 years old because of this increased push towards having teenagers. And there's a misconception too that you can't hire somebody under the age of 18 for a construction job because of the hazards, but that's actually incorrect as long as they're in an apprenticeship program. So we've seen a really great success. We have kids that are, 22 years old and buying their first home and trucks. And I was much, much older when I did all of that. And I guess, but let me back up for a second and explain exactly what an apprenticeship program is. Because
Okay.
even in the construction industry, there's a misconception. We have more apprenticeship programs than any other industry out there, but still the industry doesn't 100% understand. It's similar to a trade school in which you're learning, learning a trade. But the difference between a trade school and an apprenticeship program, in a trade school, there's a tuition, just like college, that you're paying, and you're usually paying a for-profit institute to train you in a trade. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But an apprenticeship program, it is a state registered program. Usually in Maryland here, the state of Maryland has a registered program that they take the curriculum. They make sure that it's industry recognized. It is taught by a third party, so either a union hall, they're called JATCs, or a community college or an employer could be the curriculum provider. The curriculum is provided to the apprentice completely free of charge. There's no debt either. If you quit your job tomorrow, and forgot to mention that part, you are fully employed while you're going through it. So basically, you have a full-time employment, and you either go to class, like sometimes depending on the organization, maybe you take a day out of the week to go to do your classroom portion of learning, or it's a nighttime class, or it's on the weekend. It all depends on how the program's working. But if you decide it's not for you anymore and you quit, you don't owe anybody any money either. I mean, it's really a win-win for
Yeah.
the apprentices. And the cool part about an apprenticeship program is as you advance in your program, your pay increases too. You have full benefits. We heard recently that from IBEW, that's the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, somebody that finishes in their apprenticeship program will have earned $300,000 in the lifetime of their apprenticeship program. Couple that,
Wow.
how much money does it cost to go to college?
Yes.
There's literally no debt. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think that you're 22 years old and you have amassed that amount of money. So it really is the wave of the future. There's been a ton of research and energy in the United States, going into Europe and seeing how the European model, the Swiss, for example, they have an amazing apprenticeship program and system over there that we are trying to emulate here in America, and it seems to be working.
Amazing, amazing. So you gave me a couple of pieces of education there. One is that there are opportunities for higher education along with
Mhm.
learning a trade and an apprenticeship at the same time, which I think is truly incredible. Um, but the other piece that really blew me away is the lack of debt.
Mhm.
I, like you, just got done paying for that lovely college education that I got. Well, more than I paid for it after all those loans
Mhm.
got paid for. And I think that's really exciting because in America, again, and I don't know if it started with me as like Gen X or my generation is Gen X, where it was like all of a sudden not going into trades or construction or labor became uncool. It became like kind of a less than sort of
Yeah.
way that we looked at people. But I think we have an entire generation of adults that really missed out on opportunities because all of a sudden the line that we were being told is the only thing that mattered was that 4 year degree.
100%. So interestingly, I was part of a cohort funded by the Harbor Freight Leadership Lab, and they did some research, like where did this change happen? And it actually happened under the Reagan administration. There was a report called "A Nation at Risk," and it talked about our education system. And it's funny because I grew up in the '80s, right? And I remember my family talking about how we weren't keeping up as a country with like Japan and Germany when it came to math and schools. And I remember that, like that was the
Mhm.
narrative of my childhood, was we had to go to college, we had to keep up on the global scale of the economy. And as such, you're right, we stopped funding shop classes and CTE and everything like that as a country. And now we're seeing a swing back. I think, the rubber band was pulled too far. And
Mhm.
now we're hopefully getting back to a happy medium and realizing without a skilled workforce, our country is literally going to crumble. And honestly, the skilled workforce never went away. It just wasn't talked about. We obviously still have people in the construction industry. We have a major deficit when it comes to, we have like 600,000 open positions in the United States of America right now in the construction industry. It is, during COVID, we saw it was an essential workforce. People didn't lose jobs in the construction industry because we didn't stop working. It is essential. Without that, without bridges, without roads, without hospitals, without schools, life would cease to exist as we know it. So it is exciting to see that Gen Z is embracing careers in the built environment, and not just our industry, but just skilled careers in general. Gen Z is being called the tool belt generation because they care about skills based education. So if they're going to go to college, they want a nursing degree, they want an accounting degree, they want like a skill when they come out. And then we're also seeing so many more. I think college enrollment has decreased for the first time in a generation, for the first time ever.
Wow. And college education is getting to a place where it's truly unaffordable for many of us. And as I said, we, grew up in a blue collar family, auto unions, auto workers,
Right.
electricians. My great grandfather was a member of the IBEW, the IUOE. I can go through all of the
Yeah.
acronyms that make up my labor union life,
Mhm.
and I grew up just fine. And there was absolutely no shame that I didn't come from a college educated background. I didn't come from a college educated family until I remember getting probably into my late teens, early 20s, when all of a sudden, that kind of
Mhm.
stigma came into the conversation. I was the first person in my family to graduate from college. So it like
Yep.
became sort of this medal of honor that I wore. And I have realized over time that, yeah, that's a great accomplishment, but that it doesn't diminish the incredible life that my family gave me through skilled trades and skilled labor for generations.
Absolutely. And I had the exact same background. My dad was an insulator and then later was a shop steward at facilities department, actually at a college, but neither one of my parents went to college. In fact, my dad didn't even graduate from high school. So the idea that I graduated from college, I was the first one in my extended family to get that degree, um, was a huge badge of honor for me. But also, my parents, like, they their generation is the one that was talking badly about people that didn't go to college, but they didn't go to college, right? That we weren't the ones, that we were children. So it is kind of crazy. I think Gen X gets a bad rap for it, but it was the boomer generation that started this precedent. But it's okay because
We can
now
make
we're
boomer
writing the
jokes
ship
all
and
day.
everything's it's going to be better, and it is already getting better.
So what is attractive to Gen Z about coming to built environments, into kind of your area of the world? Why are they starting to choose that tool belt, so to speak?
Yeah, I think it's the Gen Z is really socially conscious. So they like the fact that they are able to make an impact or real impact on the literal world in which they live, right? They are pragmatic when it comes to career choices. I have a liberal arts degree, but they just don't seem to be chasing those as much. They want that, to know that they have a career path. A little bit different than the millennials that like hacked their jobs
Yep.
altogether. They seem to want more stability than like the millennials before them. And I think the built environment provides that, right?
Mhm.
It's not going anywhere. We talked about like we're always going to need electricians. We're always going to need plumbers. We're always going to need carpenters. So I think there's part of that as well.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I know that within your work you have a huge passion for DEI and add DEI advocacy within construction workforce development. Tell me kind of what sparked that for you, and some of the projects or programs that you've worked on that you feel most proud of around DEI in construction.
Yeah, so I just kind of stumbled into the construction industry. I went to college. Was an advertising major with a minor in sociology, and I ended up getting a job working for a really large construction management firm in their marketing department. And through my career, I ended up, transitioning out of marketing and working on project management for a smaller construction management firm, and started talking to employers who were and utility contractors that were trying to diversify their workforce because they realized we have this problem coming, and if we keep trying to recruit the same people, we're never going to hit our goals. And the more women I spoke to, the more minorities I spoke to, I realized like this industry really provides a pathway to success that no other industry does, with a low barrier to entry, right? You don't need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to get into this industry. And as long as you're willing to work hard and learn, you can own your own business. And as a single mom, the idea of being able to provide for my family, and in an industry that there's almost no pay gap, no gender pay gap in the construction industry compared to, I think women make, I think it's like 98 cents to a man's dollar in the construction industry, which is, doesn't
Wow.
still doesn't seem 100% fair,
But
but it is
it's a
compared
lot
to
better.
some other industries, right?
Wow.
So honestly, knowing all that and knowing the amazing opportunities that exist, that's why I'm passionate about like evangelizing the opportunities of this industry to other folks that aren't thinking of construction. Because when you think of a construction worker, you're usually not thinking of a woman or a person of color. You're thinking of usually a middle-aged white man, right? And we still need middle-aged white men in the construction industry, right? And
Mhm.
I'm not knocking middle-aged white men at all. What I am saying is that if you think differently about what kind of careers you can have as a person, then the world's your oyster kind of situation. Without and then as an industry, we don't try to embrace, and we say that we'll hire everyone and the industry is available to everyone, but some organizations are better at that than others. And construction has some stereotyping for a reason. When we think of how the industry is, there's usually truth in jest about things. So if as an industry we continue to try to do better to reach populations that we currently aren't really reaching, the current percentage is about 14% of the industry is women, and that includes office roles, project management roles, everything. Skilled trades is just under 4%. So we
Wow.
have a long way to go, of really truly embracing women in the industry. Once we do that, I think if we can figure out how to fill this industry with women, then we will have solved our workforce problems. Because if women want to be here, everyone will want to be here.
Yeah, no, amazing, amazing. And it's something else we were talking about just before we started was a webinar series that you are launching with the Kennedy Krieger Institute this fall. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and
Yeah.
also a little bit about why it's so impactful?
Yes. So the Kennedy Krieger, they're here based in Maryland, and they are a preeminent leader on neurodiversity and supporting neurodiverse populations. 1 in 4 construction workers self-identifies as neurodiverse. And when I say neurodiversity, we talk 50% of those folks are folks with ADHD, and the remaining are folks with dyslexia and autism. And the industry itself doesn't often think that it's an industry that can support people with a disability because of the physical nature of this work. But when you consider that a neurodiverse population is technically a disabled population, we are kicking butt on including diverse population, disabled populations in it, and it really makes sense. You know, construction in its nature is a place in which neurodiverse people can thrive. There's deadlines, there's structure, plans that need to be followed, but also the days change every day. You're out, you're kinetically learning, you're out in the field, you're not sitting behind a desk all day. I mean, it really is a real a place in which neurodiverse populations thrive. But I still think as an industry that we could do better. when we're supporting those populations. So that's what our webinar series is going to be, with the support of Kennedy Krieger. They are the experts on making places, businesses, schools, apprenticeship programs, whatever, accessible to neurodiverse folks. So we're going to be using some of their experts, and then we're going to be highlighting some architects that specialize in creating, designing spaces to be better. I don't know about you, but an open plan office is very hard for me to work in because I have ADHD.
Yep.
And as much as I love to chat with my neighbors about things, I don't get very much done when I have a lot of distractions. So the idea of making collaborative spaces, but also private spaces, I'm really excited about this because I don't think it's anything that the industry is really thinking about right now. In fact, we've had some pushback from some of our partners. They're like, 1 in 4 people, like that seems crazy, but I think there's a lot of misnomers of
Mhm.
what it means to be neurodiverse as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would love, if you guys are comfortable, we would love to share that webinar series
Yeah.
when it comes out with our audience, because even if you're not in construction or built environments, what you just said smashes stereotypes. It smashes that people with disabilities can't be a part of construction. And for a long time, even the federal government had a moratorium on affirmative action for construction contractors because they were worried about not being able to fill critical roles. That was a missed opportunity.
Yep.
And when you can see the other thing that you just said that just really stood out to me, because I also have ADHD, is structure,
Mhm.
learning differently, learning with your hands, learning by doing, not learning by sitting in front of a checklist of things that you
Yep.
have to do, or a long manual that some PhD wrote that really is just verbose. It is an entirely different way to learn. And a lot of times at Disability Solutions, we talk about meeting people from a leadership perspective where they are. People do not learn the same way. And
Yep.
this is an excellent example of how people who process differently will thrive in environments where they can be trained differently.
Yep. Yeah, we're really
Fantastic.
excited about it, and it. I do think that this industry is accommodating people in ways they don't realize that they're accommodating, and so I'm just really excited about helping people like connect the dots and realize, oh wow, I actually am already doing this work. How do I put a name to it, and how do I make sure that when I've got, you know, Gen Z has just spent, is probably the most diagnosed generation ever with neurodiversity, and has had all kinds of accommodations when they've been in school, and now they're entering the workforce. So how do we make sure that that new employee that has just, spent, the last 12, 16 years in school with a 504 plan
Yep.
feels accommodated and feels supported, mostly supported
Mhm.
at work
Yeah,
and
yeah, and
successful.
I think it's such a great point, and we already see that Gen Z is early graduates are struggling in the workforce and are having, a significantly higher unemployment rate, whether they have a college education or not, than non Gen Z workers. So we've got both an opportunity from roles that we need to fill, but also a workforce that needs to get developed and fully integrated. So I I think it's smart that you're kind of thinking about, hey, this isn't just good for this person who has a disability. This is filling a workforce need that we
100%.
are currently on track to not have, and not have very soon. And so I think that's just a fantastic kind of win-win, which is how we like to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I just want to shift subjects really, as we kind of wrap up. Um, you had a really great post on LinkedIn that caught our attention about Job Corps.
Yep.
And if our listeners don't know, Job Corps, as of right now, is set to be closed, or the vast majority, about 100 of the 125 or so Job Corps centers around the country are set to close on June 30th. Just in the last week, we've had a decision that's stays those closures, which means those closures will not happen until the next set of court rulings that I'm out of my element there.
Same.
And Job Corps is something that is truly transformational for young people and for our country. And I'm guessing that a lot of our listeners don't even know what Job Corps is and why you're so passionate about it.
Yeah, so I want to say that I don't have any actual affiliation with Job Corps whatsoever, but I am, like you said, a passionate about it. It is a federally funded job training and education program run by the U.S. Department of Labor. It's for people ages 16 to 24 who meet low income requirements and want to learn a trade, complete their high school education, and prepare for a career, and it's no cost. It's a pathway to apprenticeship. There's hands on skilled training, supportive services like housing and meals and transportation support, counseling, career guidance, all kinds of critical wraparound services. And honestly, it's the no cost part. It's free. So it's for low income kids. And honestly, the hardest part about this closure is the fact that they'll be homeless, right? Thousands of students like that homeless. And Job Corps is not without its problems, like any large run organization is. And what we're hopeful is that with this ruling, it does give Job Corps that time to potentially look at ways that it could be doing things better without making all of these students homeless, because that is part, like you're saying right now. I hadn't seen those stats on Gen Z and unemployment, but it will obviously continue to increase when we cut things like Job Corps.
Yeah, yeah, and that's so critical. And I'm glad you brought up the homelessness, because I think I read about 80% of the students in Job Corps right now, when the program closes, will be unhoused at this point, or at that point. So that's a critical issue. But there's an that's the critical immediate issue that we don't want to lose sight of. But there's also the and is all the things that you've been mentioning throughout this entire interview, of critical workforce development that you need in Maryland, that I know that we need in Indiana, that I
Mhm.
can't imagine any of the other states have a perfect grasp on. So, kind of, if our listeners are also passionate about making sure that young people who need additional opportunities can get to work, can get to apprenticeship programs, is there anything that we can do to advocate? Is there anything that we can do even at our local level to support these types of programs, whether it's Job Corps or something else?
Yeah, well, first, I would just encourage listeners, contact your elected officials. Make sure that they know that you support, especially if you have a Republican elected officials, because they need to hear that you support this, and then just get involved. There's organizations in every single state and every single city that do workforce development. There's organizations like in Indiana, there's the Construction Users Roundtable. Here in Maryland, we have MCCI, but every municipality has a workforce board of some sort that's probably providing some kind of apprenticeship or pre-apprenticeship program. Get involved, find out what opportunities exist. There's programs like Youth Build that was also supposed to be closing. There's all kinds of government supported but also local government supported workforce programs out there that need our help, and that need to make sure that they're not going to go away, because we need the government to help fund these programs. We are lucky, like I said, in Maryland, that we have government support for apprenticeships. Not all state governments have that kind of support. So without the federal government's help, millions of jobs are going to go unfilled. And it's a huge missed opportunity, not just for the employers, but for the people themselves that really need good paying jobs. And construction pays really well.
Yeah, and those build our communities, right? Not
Exactly.
just physically build our communities,
Mhm.
but put money into our communities, provide, or contribute to our economies. Thank you so much. This has been such a fun conversation. So we always end on two questions.
Okay.
So the first one is, if you could tell an employer one thing that would change their mind about hiring a person with a disability or hiring a person from a diverse background, what would that one thing be?
Gosh, just do it. I mean, like I said earlier, you don't even realize that you probably are already employed disabled people. Some neurodiverse minds are the brightest minds in the world. So you're really missing out if you're not making space for those folks in your businesses.
And is there one thing that someone did for you that changed your life along your career?
Gosh, I think it's the person that just told me to go for my dreams, right? The day that I said that I really wanted to do this work for a living before I even realized what I was saying, what I wanted to do, and she just said, go for it. I just think back to her all the time. And without her, I'd still be just plugging along at a construction company, making a decent salary, but not really feeling as fulfilled as I do every day, knowing that we're hopefully changing not just the future of the construction industry, but lives of Marylanders and beyond.
100%. I don't think that we realize often enough in our life how impactful those words can be, that just go for it. Um, if people want to connect with you, what's the best place to find you?
Sure, I'm on LinkedIn all the time. Jennifer Dewees up there. And you can also find me on our website, which is mccei.org.
Amazing, amazing. So again, we want to thank you and MCCEI, the Maryland Center for Construction, Education, and Innovation, for supporting Changing Minds and Changing Lives podcast. Thank you for the work that you're doing. I think this is such a great conversation, guys. We'll see you soon. Lots more guests coming up. But this conversation has been a perfect way for me to wrap up my week. So thanks, Jennifer. See you
Thank
guys.
you. Take care.